Hey, hello folks. The countdown is over, so welcome. You're always committed today, and we're going to run a panel discussion about .NET. My name is Anton Boyko. I'm a Microsoft Azure MVP and Microsoft RD as well, and today I will be your host and I will help to moderate the discussion. For all the attendees that already join us, I would like to encourage you to put your questions in Slido system, so you can see the URL in the top right corner, and you can also see the hashtag that you will need to use. So basically go on that website, click on sign up button, and then you will be able to enter this hashtag and join our conversation. So being said that, I would like to ask all the participants to introduce themselves, and let's start in the alphabetic order. So let's start with Daniel.
Hello, I'm Daniel, and
Hey.
I'm a .NET developer and Microsoft MVP on developer technologies. I will tell you only a few things. I remember when I got an email with a pack of CDs with something called Visual Studio .NET Beta. At that moment, I worked on an application built with Visual Basic and Microsoft SQL, but I knew already how cool is Delphi and how powerful is Visual Studio. So it was a very nice surprise to discover C Sharp. And that was my first contact with .NET. I have started to use it more seriously more years later, like in my daily job, starting with Visual Studio 2015. And I'm happy you having me here. And let's begin.
Cool. Thanks, Daniel, for your introduction. So let's proceed next. Ilya, please introduce yourself.
Hey, my name is Illia. I'm a solution architect and also I'm Microsoft Azure MVP as Anton, not RD yet, maybe in future. So my deep contact with Microsoft technologies started from Microsoft Student Partner Program. So almost all my life I connected to some Microsoft programs in one or another way. And from I don't know, maybe 6 years from now, I'm working with .NET, with Azure, and I liking it. In some places, I think it can be better, but I hope that John and Ola do their job well, and will do it.
Cool. Thanks, Ilya. So, John, would you like to go next and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's John. I'm a PM on the .NET community team. I've been developing on all kinds of, I've shipped apps on PHP and C++ and all kinds of things. But same, when I first saw those .NET beta CDs way back a long time ago, I've just been hooked. I've had a lot of fun with .NET. I've been at Microsoft for 11 years now, just as of yesterday, I just found out. And I've done a lot of things during that time, but it's all been focused on .NET community and education stuff. So you may have read MVC Music Store. I've worked on the Rocks MVC books. I used to run the webcamps, Microsoft webcamps, and speak at Microsoft Virtual Academies. And lately, I've been helping with a lot of virtual things. We do the virtual user groups, and we do the .NET community stand-ups. And I'm also recently working on Mac, so .NET on Mac and Visual Studio for Mac. So those are some of the main focus areas.
Cool. Awesome. And last but not least, Olga, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Thank you, Anton. Hi, everyone. My name is Olga Gavrysh, and I'm program manager on .NET team at Microsoft. Right now, I'm focusing on desktop platforms such as WPF, WinForms, also working on the future versions of .NET, .NET 5, which is not the future anymore, .NET 6, and so on. And I also started working with .NET quite a long time ago. Originally, I'm from Ukraine, where right off the school, I got a job as a software developer, and that was a .NET developer. So my first app was a Beanforms app, and it was amazing to become a PM for this platform, probably 12 years after that. I've been at Microsoft for almost 4 years, and yeah, I absolutely love working there. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. Such an awesome story. So let's start our conversation today, and because now we have like a, let's say, more freedom. So I would like to go ladies first. And Olya, the first question I would actually like to ask to you. So all of us here, basically all the panelists, we all have a huge experience with the .NET in general, but actually, I would like to ask you maybe kind of a tricky question. So, why you would recommend .NET in general besides your huge experience with the .NET itself?
That is an excellent question, Anton. By the way, before I became PM, I was a software developer, and my team where I worked, it was a startup here in Redmond. We were kind of split. Half people were Java fans, and I was a .NET fan. I wasn't a PM for .NET yet, so I was completely open-minded. But I really like the technology, and especially now, the main reason why is because you can build any application on it. And usually modern apps, it's not just one app. It's not just mobile application or just desktop application, right? It's a solution, a variety of different solutions. You usually have a backend running somewhere in cloud. You have a desktop face. You have mobile faces. You might want to have some IoT solution. You definitely want to sprinkle some ML magic to help you to find the best options in making decisions. And you can do all that in one ecosystem. That is a .NET ecosystem. You don't need to use external parts. You don't need to write any glue code, which results in drop of performance. It's sometimes numerous headaches for developers. So that is the number one reason why I would choose .NET. Another reasons, and I would be super curious to hear what other panel participants think about it, but I really like Visual Studio. I know people love to complain about it, that it's slow, that we add a lot of stuff, that it's not working anymore, but still, I tried many different IDEs, and Visual Studio is my favorite. And I'm not working on Visual Studio, by the way. But it's a very convenient environment to create your code. And it helps me to just think about algorithms, think about end goal, and get as much job done for me as possible. And with that, I would be curious if, guys, you have any other ideas. Why would you choose .NET? I would be very interested to hear that.
Yeah, I would actually want to ask the same question now to Daniel. So, Daniel, as far as I'm aware, you are an MVP, but not in Azure, but in the development technologies in general. So, I assume that you should have hell of a lot of hands-on experience with the .NET. So, I would like basically to hear from you why you would recommend to start my next project with the .NET.
Yeah, I'm a little bit subjective here because I simply like it because it's cool. By the way, maybe you remember the code name for C# was cool. It's an acronym for C-like object-oriented language, kind of. Yep. And it's a great ecosystem. Like Olya said, I like that a lot because everything integrates nicely, at least from my experience. I didn't have problem with that. And I like .NET. It's like a Swiss Army knife, still robust. And you can get gradually deeper into the language I'm talking now. And I will keep getting back to C# because in my mind, .NET it's C# because I'm a developer, so that's a bias. So yeah, you can have it as complex as you like. You can start with simple things, but then you can get more challenges. You can get into the details deeper and do the things faster, nicer, or more elegant, depending on the task. I like very much C# because it nicely evolved from object language. Primarily, this is an objectual language, and evolved nicely to functional language. Let's enumerate only extension methods, link queue, immutability, functions, and now the records. It's like evolutionary steps towards something new and nice. I like it a lot. Okay, that would be my opinion.
Thanks, Daniel. And now I want to ask the same question to Illia, because with Illia, actually, we work together on a few projects, and I definitely know that Illia know not only .NET, but a few other competitive platforms as well. So that is why for you the question will be why .NET? So how it differs from those platforms, from those other competitive platforms, and why you will choose .NET for your next project.
So, like, why choose .NET? It's like very convenient because it's like the tool that I know the best, and with this tool I can do work as fast as I can, because for like another, you mentioned that I wrote code in another languages, but anyway, I'm not such proficient in this language, and sometimes I need to Google how to do one or another thing in these languages. But for .NET, I doesn't need this, at least for some simple stuff. But if we going back 6 years ago, when I have should made a decision, like when I choose the tool for at least few years of my life, there was like I should choose between Java, PHP, C++, and .NET, and like main point why I choose .NET, it was C#, because like I fell in love with this language from the first like piece of code that I have seen in it, and I like still thinking that C# is most beautiful programming languages because it like code on it is convenient. Also, like this language has a lot of like we can say that it's just a syntax. That it's just a sugar in the language that help us to write the code, but anyway, it make code more simple. But from other side, there are not much magic inside, and like I like this balance and how this language evolve. So that's why I am hoping to change this tool for me.
Yeah, thanks. That's actually a really kind of a good point. And John, you actually get the most tough kind of version of this question because a lot already been said. But anyway, I still want to hear your opinion as well. So why do you believe that we should all start our next projects with the .NET as the default tool of choice?
Yeah. Well, a lot's been covered, and I agree with the main point of I love that it's a general purpose language that and tool set that I can use. I can at my day job I can write high performance microservices, and then I can write a game on the weekend and all use the same tools and even the same NuGet packages and things. But since I need to talk about something a little different, one thing I've been noticing lately compared to some other ecosystems and tools is how kind of smooth the ramp is from getting started to building complex, enterprise applications. And I've worked with some students lately, and on things that college classes, and they're taking, learning Python and C++, and something like Python very quick to get started, but then if you want to do something more complex, that gets more complicated. C++ right from the beginning is a foot gun. It's very, just getting the joke, it's built for shooting yourself in the foot. And it's there's so many questions. I'm talking to people and it's like, why do I have to do this? And why does it, and so I don't know. I feel like the simplicity of getting started, especially with things like top level programs and C#9 records and some of the kind of functional programming, as was mentioned, those sorts of things make it easy to get started. And then it scales up to, some of the largest applications, that you'll work with, when a lot of banks and, a lot of airlines, if we're able to fly again someday, and, all these different things are running on .NET. And so that, I think that's pretty cool. The just smooth ramp from simple to, large, and it works all the way across those.
Yeah, I actually want to contribute a bit as well to what you were saying. Is that for myself, for example, C# was not the first language, and I'm not talking, let's say, about those hands-on labs that I used to do in my university. But at my senior years at the university, I started to working with two other platforms, and .NET and C# was actually my third choice. But I can agree to what you were saying in terms that that was really kind of easy for me to start. And at that point, that was basically more or less exact the same time when Microsoft implemented that transition from .NET 1.1 to .NET 2.0. But anyway, John, we're already having this kind of a good conversation, so let's proceed, but with a kind of a different question. I would like actually to know. So the Microsoft currently, it basically like let's say yesterday, it released the .NET 5, and we all know that you're already working on .NET 6. But what I really like to know, and this again may be kind of a tricky question, is that what you see as a main problem or main problems that you are trying to solve with the .NET, besides just increasing the number of versions, because it's always fun to do that.
Yeah, well, I think a big part of .NET 5 and .NET 6, and Ollie can speak more on this too, but the whole idea of, we've had kind of this split ecosystem for a while, where we've had the early adopters on .NET Core, and then we've had the actual frameworks that the applications that have actually been making money for a lot of companies for years and are large, complex applications. And those have been stuck on .NET Framework. And so a lot of what .NET 5 was designed to do, and also then continuing with .NET 6, is to help those applications move forward. So desktop applications, shipping single file executables and click once, like just being able to use .NET Core in WPF and WinForms, and the whole kind of just modernizing applications, I think, is one of the key focus areas. And as part of that, we've been doing some things. We're working on documentation and guidance on how do you do that, because we know it's very easy to update Hello World, but it's a lot harder when you have an actual application that has 10 years of bug fixes in it, and like. I've worked on before I worked at Microsoft, I worked on modernizing an application, changing languages, and the project failed. There was too much knowledge that was hidden in stored procedures and triggers and all throughout the code. So I think that's been that's a major focus now, is the kind of helping people that are on uniting .NET Framework, .NET Core into .NET 5.
So
Yeah,
if I
and
can
just
kind
to
of
add
sum
to
it up.
what Oh, go
Sorry,
ahead.
Ola.
Then I
Proceed.
can add some. Sure, no worries. Just to add to what John said, we've heard feedback from our users that they said, we never know when you're going to release a new version. It's very hard for us to plan. We cannot port our applications like the day you announce your release, right? It takes time. So what we decided to do now, we switched to scheduled releases. Every November of every year, we're going to release a new .NET. And every .NET 5, .NET 7, and so on, that's the version where we will be innovating. We'll be adding new features. And every 6, 8, 10, etc., every other version, we will be stabilizing. So we'll be fixing bugs, we will be bringing performance, and making it the long-term service product. So .NET 6 will be LTS version. That's version that we will support for 3 years. .NET 5, that was our innovation when we merged the best of .NET Core, .NET Framework, etc. And that's how we're gonna proceed in future. .NET 7 will be the version where we will innovate. .NET 8 where we will stabilize. But of course, with that we will add lots of smaller convenient features to .NET 6. And right now I can speak for desktop world. We're adding lots of tools improvements. In WPF, there's many things in the designer that will make developers' life better, such as binding failure analyzation. When you have binding failures in your application, now you have a special window and it will show you all the binding errors and you can navigate to code, you can fix it right there. We're making hot reload improvements where you can run your application and click in your app on some element, go directly to XAML code, because I know not everybody likes debug XAML code. So now you can go directly there, you can make changes, and you will see those changes right in your running application. So you don't need to stop up, change something, run the application again, because some solutions are very heavy and it actually takes time to write it, run it, stop it, debug, and so on. Right now, you can modify the running application, you can change UI, see what works for you, and that is that. And with that, in WinForms world, we are also doing lots of improvements. Right now, we started looking underneath and refactoring everything. So we found out that in that pretty old code, we did not allocate objects. When we were building on top and on top of it, it resulted in memory allocation that is not efficient. And right now we are rewriting all that, which will result in much better performance in WinForms. So WinForms has a path to future and it will be improved as well in the further versions of .NET. Plus, we are adding support for control vendors such as Telerik and Fragistic. We are working very closely with all of them, all larger and smaller component vendors. Grape City, DevExpress, we're all in great relationship. We're making sure they have a path to register their controls and work with their controls in WinForms Design and WPF Designer. And there are many other improvements. If you're interested, please ask me questions. I'm happy to talk about it, but I'm afraid I will take all the time and nobody will go to bed tonight. So
No, that's totally fine. We do have a chat open, and I see that some participants already asking questions, but for now, that's more kind of a general questions. But nonetheless, so if I can sum up basically what you and John were saying is that, first of all, you want to simplify those lift and shift scenarios, and then you also want to improve our experience working with the .NET in general by handling a lot of heavy lifting. Am I right?
yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely
Yeah.
right, Anton. Yeah.
Awesome. So now let's find out how it actually works in real life. And let's start with Daniel. So Daniel, you basically, again, and we will ask the same question to Illia later. So as a practitioner, do you believe that it's actually so? Maybe you, I don't know, can see that some of those stuff can be improved or something like that. So I would like to know your opinion about, is it really kind of much easier now to do those kind of a stuff that used to basically take such a long time before?
Yeah, that's not necessarily something related to .NET 5 only, but to any major release. With every new release, we are removing maybe the redundancy in writing the code. We are making the things more fluent, more elegant. But with .NET 5, the first thing which got my attention, and I'm planning to use them, and I started to use them on some of my pet projects, was adopting records, because it's better encapsulation. And it helped me, for example, when I have parsed some code from CSV or JSON with pattern matching. I find it very useful. The code now is much cleaner. And Not the last one, it's the code generation, because when I'm working, for example, with the CSV files, I worked a lot with parser in the last time. So when I'm trying to generate, to create C# classes, of course I can use third-party libraries, but now it's out of the box. Code generation, it's a great tool, which definitely it will help me a lot. So that would be the main focus for me, removing the redundant work and the redundant code.
Yeah, that's actually awesome because I would like again to take a small pause here and take about my actually favorite persona. And I also usually introduce that guy as a role model for the good DevOps engineer in general. And you will never actually guess who that guy is. And that guy is Jeremy Clarkson. And the reason why I do that, yeah, Ilya, I actually heard that story a lot of times. Anyway, so the reason why I introduced Jeremy Clarkson as a good DevOps engineer, if you don't know who Jeremy Clarkson is, guys, please Google him over the internet. Anyway, because one of his favorite quotes is, "I'm allergic to manual labor." And I really like to know that I share at least one thing in common with Jeremy Clarkson, because I'm also allergic to manual labor. And I can really kind of appeal to that, Daniel, what you were saying, that if I can implement something without doing something, especially manually, I will always go for it. But anyway, so let's finish on the thing about .NET 5. So Ilya, I would like to ask this question to you now. So what will be the kind of first thing from the .NET 5 that you would like to try in your probably existing or next projects?
So, like, you're phrasing the question in the way that I'm not going to answer in the ways that you asked. So, I want to. So first, I will talk about some good stuff that's happening in .NET, but then I have some like negative thoughts about like stuff that's happening, because I don't know, you're living in another city and you can't do me anything. So so from the beginning, what I like in .NET and what actually like made me like it more when first version of .NET Core was released, that because when I started working with .NET, it was all around Visual Studio. And you can do actually anything without it. But then in .NET Core, this mindset was changed, and actually there are a lot of CLI tools that allow you to do everything that you need in like just in the console on any like operation system. And it's actually what Anton talked about, like about DevOps way. So it allows us to do more DevOps stuff with this tool because it provides us flexibility. And I don't know if it's related to .NET Core 3.1 or 5.0, but I like, for example, tools that was recently introduced. It's like .NET Monitor that allow you to do profiling stuff and other on running application. So that's what I like with all this very like evolution of .NET platform. And I see that in .NET 5 it's also becoming like coming with much powerful CLI ecosystem. But what negative thoughts I have with .NET 5 is that there are already were misunderstanding in people what is .NET Core and .NET Framework, but now we gathering all together, and there are another kind of misunderstandings that I seen in people, because when I talking, I can easily say that .NET 5 is cross-platform because at some point it is, but then they see that okay, you can write UPF application with .NET 5 or WPF or Windows Form, and then they think that it's also will be cross-platform, but it's not. And that's what I seen like in people who not deep in the news and don't read every blog post on .NET site where all of this stuff described. And I see that it can be a problem in actually like software developer real life. And I don't know if you think about it when you do this merging or not. But so I don't talking like about maybe with .NET 5 it will be more convenient, because I see it definitely with .NET Core 3.1, because we have migrated some of our WPF tools to .NET Core 3.1 to allow us reuse our libraries and allow us to have like this one project and compile it on not only on Windows machines, but I have seen a lot of questions from my colleagues that, oh, it's now cross-platform, and no, it's not. So I think that's all what I wanted to talk.
So maybe, yeah, I mean, like, so maybe actually at some point, or at least how it may seem that at some point, Microsoft actually became kind of a victim of their own success. Because when Microsoft claims that now we have those things cross-platform, they set the expectations so high that now everyone believes if I will just do copy and paste of this code, because this is the .NET in general, then all my stuff will become cross-platform basically in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think it's like actually not a problem like of success or so. It's what like platform takes when we do tools that should work for web, for desktop, for mobile, for IoT, for ML, and it's side effects of all of this. Because like if we take in some Java world, there are pretty same problem if you're talking about like EE Java and Android Java and other stuff. So I think it's actually a problem that like it's a universal tool, and we should count with it, and sometimes people doesn't.
That is a very good point, Ilya and Anton. I actually can comment on that from how we saw it from inside and how we came up to all those ideas. And I totally get why receive all those questions. Why WinForms is not cross-platform when it's on .NET Core? And that's totally valid question. I'm happy to respond to that. So initially, we started .NET Core as a cross-platform solution, right? And 4 years ago, we started with a very small set of APIs that would work on any platform. And of course, we took into account all the learnings from previous experience from .NET Framework. We investigated all the bottlenecks, all that was not working according to modern nowadays standards, and we reworked it. We came up with a new architecture, a new way how things are working. And we received a great feedback. .NET Core was a very loved platform. We realized it's way more performant. It's more flexible. It allows you to install multiple versions of .NET Core on the same machine. And that way you will never be punished by regression for upgrading to the latest version, right? You can have multiple versions of .NET Core, and in each application, you can say, you target this one, you target that one. If I upgrade to the latest version and something doesn't work, I can quickly switch to the older version with like change my shoes while I'm running, no problem. And we realized that .NET Core is the future. That's the platform we should invest in. And .NET Framework, it was a great platform before, but it doesn't correspond to modern needs. And that's when we decided to bring all platforms that we want to invest in future, that we want to continue develop to .NET Core. And in .NET Core 3.0, we brought WinForms and WPF. We also added solutions for machine learning, for IoT, and so on. And then we realized, okay, it's no longer core, right? It is the platform of the future, the .NET. And that's when we decided to remove core from the name. And with the next version, .NET 5, we just dropped core and we picked the number that is higher than any existing version of .NET platform. So we had .NET Framework 4.8, .NET Core 3.1, and the highest 5, .NET 5. I knew that we might confuse users again because they, okay, there was .NET Framework, .NET Core, now .NET. What is happening? But my hope and my excitement for the future, answering your question, Anton, is that at least now I don't have to explain users what they need to target. Like if you develop library, target .NET Standard. If you're doing this, .NET Framework. If you're doing that, .NET Core, because that just overwhelms people. Now it's just .NET 5, .NET 6, and so on. And of course, most of the stuff is cross-platform because that is a new standard for development. And when we are coming up with a new solution, we are making it cross-platform. But there are few platforms such as WPF and Windows Forms and Windows Presentation Foundation that kind of have name Windows in it, and they are very tightly coupled with Windows APIs. They're wrappers around Windows APIs. So for us to make them cross-platform would mean to rewrite them from scratch. And that is not the investment we should make. We should, and we are working already on providing desktop solutions for other platforms as well. And if you heard of Maui, Xamarin Forms, and so on, that is our investment in cross-platform solution. But those technologies, they're very loved and we have a very high usage of them. We just make sure that all the new things that we come up, all new C# language versions, all improvements, performance, and so on, they're available for these platforms as well. So they have paths in future. And if you need desktop solution for cross-platform, that will be a new platform. I hope that
Okay,
makes
and
Yeah.
more
yeah,
sense.
that's actually kind of a really cool story, and it actually exactly brings me to my next question, which I prepared for our conversation. So, myself, when I was introduced to the .NET, that was like more than 10 years ago, as I was saying. So, if you want to create a desktop application, and we were talking a lot about desktop applications today, so there was only one option that was WinForms. But then the WPF appears, and then after some time the universal window platforms appears. So in general, I am a kind of a very, let's say, curious person by nature, and I like to learn something new every now and then. But let's say that I will switch my role and play kind of a bit more grumpy developer here. So the question to the Microsoft is, in general, basically, do you believe that this is the good strategy to introduce a new way of building those desktop applications like each 4 or 5 years? Or maybe it will be a better option if you will create kind of a one way, like a one framework, and then evolve it.
That is a very valid concern, and I hear that a lot as well. And that is how historically things went because, yeah, it makes sense that one platform would be easy, it won't be confusing. But there are different flavors of desktop that you might want, and those platforms provide slightly different solutions. So WinForms, it's people think of it as an old, outdated platform, but we have lots and lots of users who are still using it actively for their production applications. In fact, that is the largest amount of users we have for different .NET solutions, and we definitely will support them as long as they're there, right? And we will innovate in this area because we see demand for that. And usually when I do a lot of customer interviews, I talk to users, I ask them, what do you like, what do you don't like, what do you want to see, and so on, because that's how we inform our agenda. That's how we understand what we should be building in future. It should be directed by users' demand, not by our crazy ideas. Right. And what I usually hear is WinForms allows me to put together application in no time. I actually heard this story. One developer told me that I had a prototype, and I had 30 minutes before my meeting with my manager, and I just put it together in WinForms and showed him, instead of describing something on the whiteboard, I showed him working up. And it took me less than half an hour to put together a simple UI. How awesome is that? I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. For WPF, is much steeper learning curve, right? You need to learn XAML, there is a designer, but you need more knowledge, you need to understand data binding and so on. But WPF allows you to do things that WinForms doesn't let you do. And that is the benefit of WPF. And of course, there is UWP as well, and there are some fans of UWP, so we're evolving this platform as well. And the next project called WinUI, that is the next spin on UWP with removed all limitations of UWP. So we have demand for all those different platforms, and that's what we hear from users. There are people who want to keep building WinForms apps, and they want to see modern controls in their WinForms applications. There are lots of people who are building WPF and love it, and there are people who are trying UWP, want to see that evolve and grow. And that is our response to all those different kind of users.
And
one thing
this is actually
to address
sorry.
sorry, just one thing to address your concern that, if I'm developer, I want to learn one thing and not like 3 different things. What if I change the job and there is another project, right? That makes sense, and that's why we are trying to make our ecosystem, all projects and experience, very similar to each other. So if you're working in Visual Studio and we're adding new features, we always think, does it confirm with the general experience of Visual Studio? Is for people who worked with WinForms, if they open WPF, would they have the same past, same experience? Would their muscle memory still work? Can they benefit from it? And that's something we are paying attention to. So we're trying to make you the professional who can work with any technology.
Can I add one more question? Actually,
go ahead.
I'm not an expert in desktop applications, so I doesn't looking into news, and so. But I knew that there are like Windows 10X platform. It's mainly targeted for ARM processors, and if like on the start it wasn't such popular, but looking at how Apple switched full platform to ARM processor in one way, and I don't think that they have turned back in this process. So I think probably the same stuff will have in Windows system, because otherwise it wouldn't be like concurrent for what Apple creates. And as I know, only UWP application are compatible in Windows 10X. And what about like WinForms and WPF, or will .NET 5 provide them possibility to be run on this platform or not?
Yes, we're working on support for ARM64 for WinForms and for WPF, so it will be possible.
Cool.
Very good question. Good point.
Cool, thanks. And sorry, Ilya, you want to add a few more points to?
No.
No? Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, because I want to now again switch back to Daniel. And Daniel, maybe the same question to you, and I can probably even expand that question a bit, because again, so me and you, we also both works hands-on, and I also assume that you also may interview some new guys to join basically your current company. And my personal experience, for example, interviewing someone for a project where we may have like some legacy technologies, some legacy frameworks, some legacy code, may be quite a bit different. Not the interview itself, but actually making an offer to that person may be a bit different. So I want to ask you basically the same question in terms of WinForms, the WPF, UVP. So do you believe that basically with yet more platform it will become better, or do you believe that at some point Microsoft should stop and choose kind of a one way and proceed with that one way forward?
Well, in my opinion, evolution has a price to pay for. And I think at that time when these frameworks were planned and developed, that was the capabilities of the platform in that moment. But naturally, the direction was to unify all of these. I could say, for example, for .NET Standard, it will do the thing, but it was not like that. Then it's .NET 5 and now 6, which will be facing a more consistent unification. So I think that's natural. It was a framework at that time. It did the job as good as possible, but now we have to be open for what brings next, what the future brings next.
Okay, and John, sorry, I had kind of an issue with my headset, so sorry for that kind of a small delay. So, John, I would like to ask you basically more or less the same question, but in addition to that, would you have a nice question in the chat as well? And the question is regarding the last question: is it possible for Xamarin Forms on top of .NET 5 to become the de facto going forward standard instead of UWP?
Yeah. Well, this is interesting to me. I think of these things, desktop applications, more as a developer and less as a Microsoft PM, because I haven't worked at Microsoft from that side. I actually got my start as a developer building desktop apps, and I hear what like summarizing what other people have been saying. We've got this tension because we have 15-year-old applications that are not going to be rewritten and still want to be modernized. And then we have a lot of competition. There's a lot of really good new applications. There's new developing, operating systems and technologies that we want to provide. Developers I want the new stuff too. And so I feel like, and we also do see currently right now, like there was a time at Microsoft where the groups were very different, and there's a lot more collaboration between Windows desktop platform and the .NET team, and so there's a lot more kind of unification there. I really personally, as a developer, see a lot. I have a lot of hopes, and I look for a future where I'm writing things that are more in this kind of Xamarin Forms style, because I really like that kind of abstraction where I'm kind of writing at a Xamarin Forms layer and then able to target different platforms. I like that feel. One other thing to throw into the mix here, just as bringing in my ASP.NET background, is I'm really interested in Blazor PWAs and Blazor mobile bindings, because while I can do desktop, I always kind of struggle. I've broken the part of my brain now where I think in CSS. Like I really just kind of, it's natural to me. If I want to style something, CSS feels natural. And that may sound twisted to some people, but I actually like CSS. And so that whole kind of styling thing, I like it, And so I'm interested in that kind of Blazor, HTML, CSS, Bootstrap on the desktop, that sort of thing. I'm interested to see where that sort of thing goes.
So basically, if I get you correctly, then you're also kind of, or at least, again, that was my impression, sorry if it was wrong. So you also believe that Blazor at some point will be that one ring to rule them all. Am I right?
I don't think there's a one thing to rule anything. And I feel like, when people look at technologies, they want to have one clear winner and the rest everyone loses. And I feel like, there's always going to be some people that just really love control-based development. They love XAML. They love all that sort of thing. And then there are other people that just, I can make some XAML work if you make me, but I'm going to always be better and more productive using HTML, CSS style. So my personal, and I don't know, like product wise, but I like kind of having both of those two kind of
Yeah, but I mean, like
development
here,
frameworks.
I want to kind of, yeah, here, I mean, like I want to address that question more from a point. Well, as I was describing before, I am extremely lazy, but lazy in a good way of definition of this word. So, personally, I would be really eager actually to see that one ring to rule them all kind of framework. If I can create my, let's say, business logic just once. So currently I can do that with the .NET standard, but then I, for example, can take the Blazor and then create a UI for different platforms. It will work even better if I can take Blazor, create this UI once, like define it only once, and then some magic will happen and it will work on all my mobile devices, it will work on all the desktops natively, it will also work in a web and stuff like that. So what do you think about that? Would you like to have that kind of a thing basically in your toolbox?
I can say what I like, and when people ask me, I say I like both. I like the Blazor style, and I like for people that are just building desktop apps all day long, they're going to go crazy if we make them write HTML. So I think my personal, whenever people ask me, and again, I don't make these choices, but I say have one XAML stack, and I like Xamarin Forms, and then have one HTML style stack and have that be Blazor, and those are your two things. And then you have your same in backend code using .NET Standard or .NET 5. So that's, but I'll probably get an angry email from Olga if I talk much longer there, because I don't know.
No,
So-
you're fine. You're
yeah,
fine.
I actually like talking about Anton that he want one tool to run them all, and I actually have in my experiment book to try its run Blazor application inside Electron app. And it's actually it should be that tool to run them all.
Yeah, I'm actually
Yes,
asking
I
those
want.
questions because there were, like, a lot of hype also all over the internet, for example, that you have React as a JavaScript framework to create your web applications, but in addition to that, we have a things called React Native, when they basically try to kind of reuse the experience of a web developers to also allow them to implement a kind of a native mobile apps. So that is why I just want to again ask this question over and over again to kind of understand what you believe. And here I just want to highlight that I do understand that Jon and Olga, you may represent Microsoft on this call, but we will also like to hear not the Microsoft opinion, but also your personal opinion, if we may.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I'm happy to share them. And Anton, if you
yeah, please
allow
do.
me to quickly address the question in the chat by Hugo, he said that coming from
Go for it.
WinForms as Web Forms legacy background, it's a nice insight into knowing what should be the next step. And thank you all. So I just wanted to comment on that. Sorry?
I
Yeah.
think that it's actually
So
answer on like on previous his comment, and that he's thinking that John answered on it, but I don't know. It's my
Yeah, but
assumption.
I
But you
wanted
can
to give
continue.
answer to
Sorry.
his answer.
Yeah.
So, WinForms will definitely have a future in .NET 5, .NET 6, and so on. So if you are on WinForms and if you have projects on WinForms, you don't have to rewrite them. They will have a clear path and all the improvements and benefits of the future .NET frameworks. But WebForms stays in the past, and for that one, I would recommend Blazor. So that's my quick comment. And now go back to you, Anton.
Yeah, I mean, like that was actually kind of a really good conversation. But I also see that we actually already almost 1 hour into this conversation, and I would like to talk about a few different things as well. So let's probably switch back to Daniel again. And Daniel, we will start this round, this question with you first. So let's talk a bit more about the practical stuff. So we all know that the microservices in general, that's kind of a really good and modern and fancy approach of doing your server-oriented architecture right now. But again, for the competitive platforms, and I will not name Java on this call directly, so for the competitive platforms, what we understand is that there are such things as, for example, Spring Boot, which allows you to bootstrap your microservices quite fast. For .NET, at least the most well-known way of splitting your application into microservices is to utilize something like a Service Fabric as a platform. But Service Fabric in general, I like it by a lot, by the way, but in general, that's really kind of a huge and big solution. So the question I would like to ask to you related to the microservices, so do you believe that it will be beneficial if we will have, let's say, a more lightweight kind of a template or standard like a Spring Boot to bootstrap our microservices in a .NET?
Definitely,
Daniel?
it will help. Yeah. Oh, okay. Definitely, it will help a lot to have some bootstrapping here or boilerplate solutions, because when I started to play with microservices, it was a problem to identify, okay, but where do I start? And of course, it helped me the knowledge from other architectural approaches, but it was a problem. How do I start? I didn't work though with too much with microservices. At least not. I didn't create the architecture, and I cannot tell much. But from a beginner perspective, this would help a lot.
Okay, so we will actually get back to this topic, but for now, let's just switch to Ilya for a moment. So, Ilya, I know that you also had an experience with implementing the microservices architecture. So, what is your opinion? Maybe you can give some recommendations in general where we should start in the first place when we will create our new application based on microservices.
So actually, like most of my experience coming when we already have like some. I coming into the projects where some people already done some these infrastructures. When we have like big teams, we have like separate DevOps teams that set up in all this stuff. But then I have tried to do some microservices in my underground. And then I understand that, okay, no, I'm not going with microservices on this project just because I should spend months every evening to set up everything to work as I want, and I just created application and deployed it on Azure Web App, and that's all. So I really tried, but I can do it very well, and even now when we have most of our infrastructure fix it, some measure point already developed, but when we want to add one more microservices, it mostly happen in the way where we copy pasting some code from older microservices. Yeah, it's our problems that I hope to fix and create our own boilerplate for new microservices. But in general, I have heard that. So yeah, Anton mentioned like Spring Boot, and I heard about other stuff that help like bootstrap your microservice application in fast way. But I haven't found anything good for .NET, unfortunately.
Yeah, and on this part, yeah, actually, I wanted to get back to John and Olia, and John, as I can see, you have something to contribute, so please do.
I'm dying. Yeah, I'm dying to talk here. Okay, so first of all, I do need to mention, compared to Spring Boot, there's also Steel Toe. Steel Toe is a .NET. It's a .NET Spring Boot similar thing. It is run by the Pivotal project and it's part of the .NET Foundation. So that handles some of the things like service discovery, secret management, and things. But answering your question about getting started with microservices on .NET, I highly recommend Project Tye. That's TYE. Take a look at it. It's still early on, and now's a good time where you can let us know how it works for you. But what's really cool with Project Tye is it was built by David Fowler, Ryan Brandenburg, some other people on the ASP.NET and .NET teams. And they went and looked at creating new projects using Docker and Kubernetes and they looked at everything that was frustrating and hard and tried to fix it. So you can go through the tutorials, the getting started tutorials, and have microservices using .NET, Redis, like Kubernetes deployment, all kinds of, pulling in like Postgres. And you can go through and do this in about 30 minutes and have all that running and deployed to Kubernetes. And what's really cool is it makes it very easy to get started locally. So the real goal of Project Tye is to make it easy to get started building something that works with Docker, Kubernetes, and then later you'll be able to deploy it, but it handles the things like debugging and secret management and all that sort of stuff. It just kind of magically works. So I can create a solution with, say, 3 APIs and one web app, ASP.NET Core web app, and then I install .NET Tye as a global tool, and I just say Tye run, and it automatically looks at my solution file, sees all my projects, launches them all together, and is able to, for my web app, to call my APIs, et cetera. And then if I want to add in a Docker, I just do Tye init, and that generates a small little YAML file, and it's the only YAML file I have to work with in development. And then I just add in the name of a Docker container, and I say, I would like this Docker container that has Postgres or Redis or whatever, or a Kubernetes dashboard, and it automatically just runs. So it's pretty amazing how it's just kind of magic. But then if I want to deploy it and switch over to doing all the proper, have my DevOps team run Kubernetes, it still all works there. So I love it.
Cool. Thanks. We should definitely check the Project Tye that you were talking about. So yeah, let's just take one more minute. So Olga, do you want to contribute to this part of the conversation as well? Maybe you have like some other things that would like to share with us.
Actually, for this part, John covered it so nicely that I don't have much to add. Just like try Tye. I'm personally very excited about that project myself.
Okay, because as I was saying before, I was mostly the kind of a advocate for the service fabric, but we will probably get to that topic later in our conversation. So still, let's proceed with more kind of a practical stuff, and another area which I do believe, especially to the .NET world, it came again, let's call it quite recently, and I'm talking about things which are related to AI and ML. And here again, I would like to start with Daniel, probably. So Daniel, if you have any experience working in AI or on AI or ML project with the .NET, can you please share a bit of that experience? So in general, how .NET can help me to start with those projects?
Yeah. I have worked recently with ML.NET, which is on-premise framework, but it's more a better fit for a developer because you are coding things, not calling or integrating things. And first, I would like to find a motivation. What would we start using machine learning in our code? Of course, ML.NET, it's a .NET framework. We have a lot of other frameworks, but this is for .NET developers. And there are more than 5 million .NET developers in the world. So I'm pretty sure they are not happy to learn Python or other language just to realize they have to integrate their work with .NET. And what I like the most with about .NET, ML.NET, this is a code first framework, and it runs in memory. So it's on premise, so you can code the model builder, train in process, and start using it. I cannot imagine IoT, for example, IoT in cloud exclusively. So it's important to be able to run ML.NET on IoT devices as well. And that's still something which has to be solved for ML.NET. Then it's open source. You can contribute, and you cannot train yet deep learning models, not yet, but you can do inference, and you can do some transfer learning. So I think it's crucial to adopt this paradigm, because it's a paradigm, the same as it's functional programming or object-oriented programming. It's a new paradigm. You have to see where it fits in your code, which problems it solves. Of course, it will not solve all kind of problems. It's not a general panacea, but you can solve problems which are impossible to solve with traditional programming, for example. Or maybe it's easier to solve with machine learning instead of using traditional programming. For example, if you have to make a lot of decisions, you just imagine, I don't know, dozens, hundreds of ifs. You can train this with a machine learning model and do it much easier, much more flexible. So that's why I'm recommending this new approach, machine learning, because you can solve easier some classic problems, or even solve some problems which cannot be solved with traditional programming.
Yeah, could you maybe elaborate a bit on that more and actually probably give us kind of an example of I don't know, like a task or something like that, which potentially would be possible to solve without, let's say, machine learning concept in general, but it's actually much, I don't know, it will bring you some profit if you will solve it with the ML.NET library, so something like that.
Yeah. For example, if you're having a system, an IoT system, and you are reading maybe 100 sensors, data from 100 sensors. If you try to do that with traditional programming, you will end up having, I cannot imagine how many statements, if branches, trying to figure out. It's simply unmaintainable. But having enough data, machine learning, it's like a horse. If you try to compete with a horse, maybe in the few meters you are getting in front, but when you are done, the horse just got ready for the race. It's the same. Machine learning, it's more efficient if you have enough data and more data, more features, more vectors to measure. In the same time, if we are thinking of deep learning, it's again, we simply cannot solve some traditional problems like image recognition in a traditional way. At least it's very complicated, but using neurons and layers, you can try to do an approach by detecting first some edges, lines, corners, and then some shapes, and then some object parts, and at the end, the entire objects. So that would be something which is almost impossible to do with traditional programming. Of course, at the end, this is code, but machine learning power resides in the possibility to find a function which approximates an algorithm for your problem just from data. So if you have bad data, of course you will end up having a bad machine learning model. So and this was my first thing which I found when I tried to build my own machine learning models. It's not the hardest part. It's not to find a good trainer, a good algorithm. The hardest part is to get the data ready, because the data, it's garbage. Most of the time they are not prepared to be used right away. You have to prepare them, and that's the hardest part. So start with that part if you try to get into machine learning, because choosing an algorithm, it's easy, and we have some tools which makes our life easier. For example, the model builder in Visual Studio, it's doing that for us, and it's simply generating some C# code so you can get it started. You can then play with the data and try to get a better model. But do not forget, if you don't have data, you have anything. You don't have anything. I mean, no data, no party.
Yeah, that's basically the
We
same
have a-
joke applies to the solution architecture, that if you have, in terms of your requirements, if you have shit in, then you will have shit out, basically. If you have shitty requirements at the beginning, the architecture of your solution will be basically the same quality as your requirement. So just exactly what you were saying. So I was interrupting. So Olga, do you want to contribute to this one as
I
well?
wanted also to pitch in a joke about preparing the data. We have that running joke that data scientists, the Pareto principle, 18-20%. So data scientists spend 80% preparing the data and 20% complaining about having to prepare the data.
Very nice.
Yeah, and this is actually kind of a... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just wanted to add to, Anton, when you asked about some examples and machine learning, that's what I used to hear a lot when people are like, oh, machine learning, I've heard about this cool thing, and I definitely should know it because it's a trend, but how do I use it? What is the benefit of it? And surprisingly, it is everywhere. If we think about it, when we take our phone and it unlocks when we look at it or use a fingerprint, that is machine learning. When we watch Netflix or in Ukraine, YouTube videos, and the engine recommends us related videos, that's machine learning. When we go to some website and we want to get approximate estimate of the cost, or when we are ordering a taxi and we see approximate cost and approximate time when we get there, well, they don't know when exactly we will get there, how much time it will take us. That's all machine learning. It's prediction. And it amazes me how much machine learning and AI is already incorporated in our life, and we deal with it on a daily basis, every moment, without realizing that we do. I'm very passionate about this area because I was the PM on ML.NET before I started working on a desktop. So I was that person who decided to open source internal project and productize it and release it as a ML.NET. So yeah, that is one of the passions of mine. It was very interesting to hear Daniel giving the feedback as a user. So thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
I like to add. I'm sorry. I'd like to add something. You all know about technical debt. I like to call this data preparation debt. So if you don't take care of the data, you will pay the price later.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just, Oh, so sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to comment on Olga that you shouldn't underestimate Ukrainian. We also have Netflix.
Oh, apologies. We didn't have it when I was there. Otherwise, I would
So
never
yeah,
leave.
it's 3 year already, I think, or even more.
Oh.
And also, like, if we're talking about ML.NET, I can be. I have thought that I'm the villain of today. So I also will like hazard the clouds around you. Because I want to say that, yeah, like ML.NET is cool stuff, and it actually what like community wanted, but from other side, it comes so late. So at the time where like Python became a monopolist on the ML area, and there are a few things. First, you can't find like data scientist job on .NET. It's first problem. Another problem, you can find data science specialist on .NET. It's another side of the problem. And so I have worked on the one startup a few years ago, and we actually have a need to do, like, it's not purely ML, but we do some NLP stuff, to understand what our customers ask in the chat. And we have thought to use ML.NET, like, I think 0.5 were already, but and we want to use it to like create all this logic, but we understand that we haven't actually specialist who can do it fast, and we fired just a person who knew this part of the like ML, and he wrote all codes that we need in 2 hours on the Python, and we just integrated a separate service in our application. And I see it's like an yeah, so email.net is good for beginners, but then you're facing complex problems, and there are little chance that you find answer for it on .NET, and there are big chance that you should switch to Python. At least you like will learn all this mathematics underground, and will do things that you need by yourself in .NET. So, but I see, like, I would like ML.NET to become some stuff that everyone use, but I see very low probability of it. And that's like what concern me.
Yeah, thank you. That is an excellent concern. And Ilya, you're absolutely right that there is a huge and absolutely amazing community in Python. And that's why when we were building ML.NET, we didn't want to compete with Python. We wanted to collaborate with them. We wanted to embrace all the goodness that Python has. And for the case that you've described, for example, you have a data scientist who writes in Python, and he or she will never move to object-oriented programming. That's totally fine. You can take the model in Python and ingest it in your ML.NET model. So you can have your C# code and .NET infrastructure and have ML.NET model ingestion. You can use ML.NET for inference. That is when you take the ready model and use it, make a call, asking a question and getting the answer. But you can take the model, the mathematic brain from Python, and ingest it in ML.NET. And ML.NET, that's not just a machine learning solution, it's a framework. And underneath it, it allows you to use different existing machine learning solutions as well. It works very well with Onyx, which is universal machine learning standard, and everything that you can import in Onyx, you can export from Onyx model to ML.NET and use. And yeah, you make a very good point that there is no big community around ML.NET yet, and it's very hard. It will be very hard to hire a data scientist specializing in ML.NET. But we kind of knew it in the beginning, and first the community is growing. We saw incredible growth in open source contributions, in people MVP around it. So we receive more and more feedback, and we hope that eventually we'll grow that community to a very large audience. But also it's fine if it won't happen, because developers, C# developers, they remain in C# and .NET. And there are many people who don't want to learn Python and don't want to get data science degree and go through all the calculus and probability theory. They want to just ingest light machine learning that would recommend certain products, related products. Or, for example, I have a blog on my website and I just want to mark positive comments and negative comments. So I want to use a very simple sentiment analysis. I don't want to spend like half a year and hire a data scientist. I just want to write some .NET code, which I can because I'm .NET developer. And with ML.NET, you can easily do that.
Yeah, and actually, I would like to add that a new version of ML.NET, there are like model builder tools that allow you to not write even all this code, but just click in Visual Studio Windowses and set up your ML model. And actually, like there are option of AutoML that will choose itself what actually model suit you better. So yeah, it's like very good point, like for people who don't want to they don't want have like big accuracy, but they want to have some this ML stuff, and it suits their needs a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And accuracy is another thing. When I was giving talks on machine learning, I usually get asked, like, so when do I stop training the model? What is a good accuracy for me? And there is no unique answer because it really depends on your model. If you're gonna show some targeted advertisement, probably like 80% accuracy is fine. If you want to determine cancer patients and base your treatment on that, then you need a very, very high accuracy, like 0.99999. And that is why that's probably the next question that Anton had in mind is, do we need data science, or do we want to use leverage frameworks, right?
I will make a joke here. You should stop before getting to 100%.
That is a good point. Very good point.
When you have 100%, the things are maybe bad. It's overthinking.
Yeah, or maybe your neural network is overtrained and it just feeds your data and it will work on another data set.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but Oli, you actually mentioned that good point. So for a moment, I would like to wear my grumpy developer hat again and ask you this question. So, as a grumpy developer who has an experience with the C# and with the .NET, but zero at all experience with the ML.NET, what will the learning curve for me look like? Do I need to possess some, I don't know, like an really kind of exotic knowledge, or what?
Yeah, that is a very good question, and that's what we spent a lot of time thinking. We were trying to smooth that learning curve, because before ML.NET, if you're using just calculation, the learning curve is extremely steep. Basically, I would recommend you to go to school and spend a few years studying mathematics, right? But that's not the case in modern world, and there are lots of developers who just want to add some machine learning and don't spend years studying calculus and probability theory. So that's why we were investing in AutoML. AutoML, that is the solution in Visual Studio, where you can, that is a plugin that you install, and there you point Visual Studio to your data, and you specify which column you want to predict. And then basically everything is done for you. So it walks you through the wizard and it analyzes what you're trying to predict. It looks at your data. It picks a few different algorithms, run all those algorithms, compares the result, like accuracy, different forms, and gives you the winner. So it says like, here's your algorithm that shows the best result on your data. Here's the model. It exports it into C# code, and it creates even a sample of how you can use the model to ask questions and receive answers. And I really like that experience because if you don't have any knowledge, you can just click, click, click and get C# code. That's how I used to learn when I was a developer. I always like to run stuff, debug stuff, and look at the code, read and understand it. Instead of going and reading some Wikipedia articles or some books, that's like very time consuming. I always wanted to get my hands on the code. With ML.NET and that AutoML solution, it's called the plugin in Visual Studio called Model Builder. You can get a working C# code that you can debug and you can see how it works. And then, of course, it will get you some accuracy. And if you're satisfied, you can go ahead and use it. But if you're working on some very advanced machine learning problem, then you want to improve your model. And improving model means preparing your data better, maybe adjusting your algorithms, adjusting hyperparameters, that's variables you can change in your algorithm to get a better machine learning performance, like better accuracy, better quality metrics. And for that, of course, you need to understand what you're changing, how it works. That's where data scientist knowledge come into place. But what is good about ML.NET, at least you have all the APIs there in your code written for you, so you can see how it works. And if you want to improve, if you want to get a very high quality model, if your machine learning problem is not trivial, if your data is robust and dirty, you need to clean it. That's where I would encourage to invite in data scientist expert or become an expert by yourself. And that's where you probably want to look at data analysis, some calculus, some probability theory, etc., 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 just to understand how machine learning algorithms work. Does that
Okay,
answer
so
your question?
almost. So let's continue maybe for a minute more on this
Sure.
topic. So let's say that I will engage with the subject matter expert and I will invite a data scientist to my project. So for that guy or girl, of course, so does that person need to also possess some kind of exotic knowledge, or his general data science knowledge and potentially some previous experience with the Python will just do to tweak that model for my ML.NET solution?
So I would say the person, first thing, if the model works fine and you're happy with the result, you don't have to. Just use the model, go ahead. You also can try to change some parameters yourself, just based on C# knowledge, just try and fail. If that works for you, perfect. You achieved your result, no investment needed. But there are some tasks when companies are working on extremely elaborate machine learning solutions, and good enough is not good enough for them. Right? They want to achieve like perfection, the best they can. In this case, we will invite data scientists, and for them, the machine learning knowledge would be essential. Then, is it in C# or is it in Python? You probably can do a pair programming with a C# developer who can explain the C# language to the data scientist, and data scientist can explain the domain ML knowledge to the developer. That's one approach. Another approach, if you have data scientist team that say, we just give you the model, we don't want to learn anything, we have our like things set up, here's the model in Python. Well, then you just ingest that model, you import it in your ML.NET solution, but everything else, all the code your developers write on incorporating that model in your application, on making API calls, on asking your model questions, giving the answer, That is all in ML.NET, so it's in C#, it's in .NET. You don't need to write glue code. You don't need to ingest like Python, and that's where you usually lose performance and your patience. So with ML.NET,
like-
that step is
exactly.
eliminated. Yeah.
Awesome.
I would like to
Awesome.
add something important here. When you are building a model, it's not very easy to do that inside the application. So for that, now we can use Jupyter Notebook, which works with .NET kernel. And great news, yesterday I realized they have updated it to .NET 5. So my first step was to upgrade my code using records and stuff. But the idea is you can experience there, and you can write some charts and analyze data using, for example, data frames, which is another new library developed by Microsoft and the community. And you can fine-tune a good machine learning model there before integrating into your application and consume it.
Yeah, that's actually kind of a really cool part, because I was aware about Jupyter notebooks in the first place, but I usually associated them more with the Python and with that community, and I was not aware that currently it was integrated with the .NET. So, as all of us can see, you learn a new thing every day. But anyway, so Daniel, we were talking with you now, and I also have that question which I want to ask you first. So, my personal experience, for example, I didn't have any experience with the ML.NET, but I had some experience with the Azure Cognitive Services. And what I like about Azure Cognitive Services is that you just consume them as an API, and that's it. So potentially the learning curve will be much better, because what I need to know is just I need to know how to send an HTTP request, and that's it. So in your opinion, for example, what you would recommend to me and potentially all the other attendees that are on this call with us, when I should kind of take more attention and invest more in the ML.NET or similar solution, and when I should go and just be happy with a thing like cognitive services.
Yeah. Well, if you want to build a custom model, definitely you have to go with the ML.NET, because you are in charge of coding the machine learning builder pipeline. If you want only to consume, you can use CNTK or other platforms. But as I said before, ML.NET framework, it's code first. So you are coding the model builder pipeline. What you have to know if you want to get into this, first you have to know how to prepare your data. Of course, as I said before, Jupyter Notebook will help you, because you can see the data distribution. You can see some box plot showing the distribution of your data. You can see histograms, correlation metrics, confusion metrics, and other instruments which help you realize which part of the data is good for you, which features are good for your model, and which are not so good, or which are redundant and we should get rid of them. So I would recommend this duo, like Jupyter Notebook for preparing the data, and Model Builder to help yourself choose a better trainer for your problem. And having this, you will have very quickly something which works. But of course, if you want something better, for example, to fine tune your model, then you need more data science knowledge. But up to this point, you don't need to know extensive data science. Of course, some general knowledge, it helps always.
Okay, cool. So
I
let's
can
switch
just
to.
very
Oh, yeah.
quickly add to that
Go ahead.
my personal opinion that Azure ML, that's an amazing solution, and they have for standard problems, they have like state-of-the-art solutions. So if you have a standard formal like problem like sentiment analysis, image recognition, detection objects, etc., try Azure ML if that works for you, and if you're willing to pay the price for that, perfect. You're done with your ML.NET task. It's all working. But if sometimes, as Daniel mentioned, your problem might be very domain specific. And in that case, you might need your custom solution that Azure ML doesn't have, because that's your personal, very specific into your project thing. In that case, you need a custom machine learning, and that's where ML.NET comes into place. And another option, another reason why you would choose ML.NET, because it's free. So if you don't want to pay the price, and you can, if you have developers, you can create that model in the reasonable time. You can get it for free. So
Okay, and
that was my
yeah,
5 cents. Yeah.
yeah, that's basically cool stuff. So again, I see that we're running out of time. And I have a few more questions. So let's switch to the Mr. Villain right now. So let's start with an Ilya, but John, keep yourself ready. So the question is, and again, I know Ilya, and I know that at least both of us at some point in time, and we'll still continue, we're working with the .NET not on Windows-based laptops, we're working on a MacBooks. But the thing that we're usually facing with the MacBook, yeah, exactly. I cannot show my MacBook because I'm currently using it to join this conversation. So anyway, I mean, like the issue that we're usually facing is that the the Visual Studio tool, which we love, works only for Windows. So on Mac, you have a few other options. You have Visual Studio Code, you have Visual Studio for Mac, you have like third-party tools like Rider, but still, all of those, even combined, are less powerful than the full-blown Visual Studio for Windows. So let's start with an Ilya first, and let's basically kind of let me ask you this question in this way. So do you believe that it will make sense for the Microsoft to invest more into creating the first party, let's say, top grade tooling for Mac for working with the .NET? And if so, what will be basically kind of a top features that you would like to see in the new Visual Studio for Mac?
Okay. So again, your like final question formulation is not what I expected at all, but I will try to answer this. So first of all, like let's start with answering your main question: if it's worth to create like this best tool on Mac. I think from business perspective, it doesn't worth it, because I knew that Visual Studio coming with a lot of like dependencies on Windows 98, and it takes time to heather all together and remove them. So I haven't looked nowhere in the code of Visual Studio, but it's just assumption of what I wrote in their blogs. And from this perspective, I don't think that it's worth it to like convert Visual Studio for Mac. And from other side, I use Rider a lot. And I see that it becoming better and better. I still have some issues open in their issue tracker that I want to be added. Mostly it coming with actually Azure development. And that's probably that's what I miss when I'm working on the Mac. That there are not such powerful tool for Azure as it were in in Visual Studio, like in this full weight Visual Studio, not code. And I have struggled with it a lot when like I write code for so I actually struggled with it a lot when I try to use Rider on Windows to write code that works on Azure Compute Services. I think that how this service is named, and I struggled because this services works only on in Visual Studio, and only Visual Studio know how to start those services. And now I see pretty same problems if we're talking about Service Fabric. I have like .NET Core solutions that runs in Service Fabric, but I can have like this full fields of solution like I have in Visual Studio on Mac, and maybe that's what I'm missing, but it's not such critical, and I don't think that it works if you, like, for example, converting Visual Studio for Mac was like 100 human years to do this. It's definitely not worth it, and I will live with Rider. But from other side, I think that like I see benefits that Rider doesn't fulfill needs only macOS developers, but fulfills only also Windows developers, and it's a create concurrent environment where Visual Studio should evolve faster to be concurrent for like their user. And I think that it's actually main point where .NET is monetized, because actually .NET is free, but if you want to have a good developer experience, you probably should pay for Visual Studio, at least for professional edition, if you do .NET for money. If you want to have the best experience, you should pay for enterprise version. It's also costs some money. And from this perspective, I see that some of new features of Visual Studio were actually forced that they have concurrent. And actually, I seen that Visual Studio team doesn't think that, okay, we have poor code completion and code analysis stuff, but we have like the Irish Sharper that fix our problems. But now it was reversed, and now they should fulfill these needs by their own, doesn't rely on ReSharper, because ReSharper actually Rider itself, and it means that people in Rider will have better experience, and everyone knew that Rider works faster than Visual Studio, especially with as Visual Studio with ReSharper. And I have like I think in my teams there are half people who works from Rider and half team who works from Visual Studio, and I think that it's good stuff actually. Sorry,
Okay,
I flew in another way because you asked about macOS, and I start answering just about Visual Studio and Rider.
No. That was actually, I do believe that was really kind of a good conversation starter. So, John, I know that this actually kind of falls a bit more in your bucket. So, can you also contribute into this conversation?
Sure. I think both as both from the .NET product side and also thinking of myself as a .NET developer, that it's really good and healthy that there are multiple ways that Visual Studio is not the only way to develop .NET. That was a problem in the past, right? Like .NET Framework, and before that, like VB6 and other things, where it was one product and one IDE. And I do know that the .NET team like works closely with Visual Studio on the tooling and everything, but there are separate concerns in product management, and the PMs like deeply care about making sure that things work well, command line and cross-platform and all that. So it's I think it's good and healthy, and I love that Writer's out there. I love that Resharper's there, and JetBrains is a member of the .NET Foundation, their corporate sponsor, and they're it's cool that they're part of that. So I want to be sure that I'm clear on that. The thought on what Visual Studio for Mac does and Visual Studio for Windows is true. Visual Studio for Windows has been around for a long time and has deep integration with Windows, including things like Windows Forms and Web Forms and some of these tooling things that are never going to be cross-platform. So Visual Studio for Mac, what we really try and focus on is current modern .NET workloads. So those are web with ASP.NET Core and Blazor. And then that also includes cloud with Azure Functions. So that's the one kind of web side. Then there's also games. We have Visual Studio tools for Unity. And we also have mobile. So those are the kind of the main areas where we see .NET developers working on a Mac. We definitely, want Visual Studio Code and .NET CLI to work great on Mac, and we test those. But for instance, if I'm a .NET developer used to working on Windows and I go over to the Mac, if I'm just going to go Visual Studio Code, if I want to create a new project, I don't have my file new ASP.NET Core app or my file new Blazor, right? I need to drop to the command line and run some code, type some things that I copy and paste from somewhere and hope I get it right. So with Visual Studio for Mac, we have the file new experience, including now support for .NET Core custom templates. So you can create for instance, the Project Uno has custom templates, and there's some for creating unit test solutions and things like that. So I can do file new, Project Uno. So those are that's kind of the main focus there is .NET Core being kind of that Visual Studio for Mac being if you want something similar to Visual Studio for Windows. It's not the exact same. It doesn't have all the same tools, but for those specific areas that we're really focusing on, those are the, file new project, the debuggers, the deployment stuff, I can right click deploy or, integrate with the tools there. So, yeah.
John, a quick question, please. By your knowledge, Visual Studio for Mac will work on M1, Apple M1 ARM CPU?
So it's still being worked on. And we've done some preliminary tests. There's kind of two steps to this. And we actually need to get some documentation out. We've done, so far it's been kind of responding to tweets, and we need to really get a statement out. There's two steps to this. And the first is there's the Rosetta translation layer, which will translate, the existing x86 code to work on M1. And so far in our tests, that's working okay, but we need to do thorough testing. And then farther down the road is the actual rewriting code to be native to M1, and that's a longer term thing. But our first step is looking at the Rosetta translation.
I'm waiting for the green line before buying my first Apple.
I know. Yeah, that's actually, I have a meeting with the VS Mac PM team today, and that's one of the things I'm going to be talking to them about is hey, we need a specific statement on this because people do care and people are excited about the M1, and it's amazing technology. So, yeah.
I think it will accelerate transition towards ARM CPUs, and I put some hope here with ML.NET, which is not yet able to run on ARM CPUs.
Yeah. So there's the performance. Well, so just one thing there. There's a performance, and also the power usage is amazing too, right? So that's really great to have the much longer battery life or lower power usage.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was exactly my point. I'm not sure that this question in particular actually falls into your bucket, but still, I will dare to ask it. So we know that Microsoft currently owns GitHub, and GitHub a long time ago creates this platform called Electron, and a lot of tools based on Electron, even the Visual Studio Code itself. So maybe maybe there are some kind of I don't know, like rumors, gossips, or whatever somewhere within Microsoft. So are you planning to also invest to improving the experience with the Electron on those IRM CPUs, like in a new Macs?
I don't know about that. I do know we do have some products, like you said, Visual Studio Code, and there's several others that run on Electron. I know there's several like Azure tools. And so, but I don't know, that's kind of a separate area inside of that. Also, Electron is open source, so you can, follow along on that too. So,
Yeah, I was
but
planning to do
I
that
don't
on the
have anything
weekends. Yeah.
And I think that probably Apple itself want to contribute into Electron to at M1 support, because it's actually what I hear in everywhere. It's complaining that there are no apps that work on this M1 silicon, and actually most of the app that I use in through the day, it's Electron app. So like Teams app, Slack app, everyone around right now writing Electron app instead of doing good work and write native applications.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're almost run of time, but I really want to ask this kind of a last question. And again, let's start with the Daniel. And why? Just because we can. So, Daniel, I would like you to be the first one person who will ask this question. So, let's say that, like in those Arabian Night fairy tales, you find a lamp and there is a genie inside, and he can basically, for you, he can change one thing in that not in .NET, in .NET, just in one day. So what that one thing will be that you would like about .NET to be changed, like your wish to the genie?
Well, I would ask Genie to replace JavaScript with Blazor, because I have a specific reason. For example, you cannot train a machine learning model in Blazor because it's single-threaded. If it would be multi-threading, it would be able to train. That way, we have to wait for the trainers, for the machine learning framework to downgrade to single thread, or I don't know what other magic the Genie could make. But this would be.
Okay, so Olya, would you like to go next? I know that you're working for Microsoft, but anyway, I still do believe that you will be able to contribute to that as well. So, what kind of a wish you want from Genie to be granted in terms of changing one thing in .NET?
So I'm kind of in charge of changing things in .NET, so I will pick what is really hard for us to change, just to outsource the trouble to Genie. I want all
Awesome.
high DPI issues for WinForms to be gone, because we are working on it and it's an extremely hard thing to solve. So I would totally leave it up to Genie to take care of that one.
Awesome. Thanks. So, Ilya, would you like to go next? What do you like to change about the .NET? You are muted actually, because I cannot hear
Yeah,
you.
sorry. Yeah, actually, my question ask will be big, because I want Genie to make WinForms and VCF cross-platform. And I think that not only .NET developers will benefit from it, but also a lot of users of the app that works unfortunately only on Windows, or they can work on Mac or other platforms through some virtualization. But anyway, I think it will be very good stuff to have.
Ilya, I'm
Okay,
very
and
happy
also-
you're asking Jeannie, not me, about that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
also we should ask Jeannie to also make it work on top of new Mac CPUs. Yeah.
Yeah.
M1.
It's one additional point.
Okay, so John, what do you like to ask from Jeannie?
Okay, well, since it's a genie, I'm going to make a big request, which is that it's actually November 2021. .NET MAUI is shipped, so I have my cross-platform desktop app, and also I'm able to fly and see you in person. So that's my big. I've done a little scope creep.
Awesome.
Yes, Jeannie, cure a global pandemic, please, as a side job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, guys.
Wait
that's,
until tomorrow.
Yeah, that was extremely cool wishes that you want to ask from Jeannie to fulfill. So let me just check what we have in the chat. So I do believe that all the questions. Yeah, I do believe that all the questions that were asked, we actually answered them during our conversation. Oh, wait a sec.
Well,
So we have one more contribution from. Yep. Sorry, Olga, go ahead.
Sorry, I saw one feature for WPF, and I wasn't sure if that was a suggestion for what John was talking, or was it the question, what new features are in WPF? I'm trying to read it in different ways. So if you guys are curious about what new features are added in WPF, you can go to, for example, YouTube and check out a .NET Conf 2020 talk by Dmitry Lalin. Let me share my screen very quickly and show you this. As you can see, I have a wide angle screen.
My idea was that you are sharing the three monitors simultaneously.
Yeah, sometimes. With Teams,
and looks like
works.
she multitasking and looking at other videos instead of listening us.
All right. How about now? So that is one big Dmitry Lalin's talk. What's new for desktop? On YouTube, .NET Conf 2020. That is the conference that we recently had. And there you can hear lots of things about all the .NET news and improvements. So I would highly recommend check out that. And with that, I go back to Anton. You wanted to read another question, right?
Yeah, one more that we recently had in a chat is from Hugo. That Hugo wants to, I do believe, know an email of some HR person in Microsoft because he wants to apply for a position in Microsoft. And in addition to that, John, he wants your dinosaur and my BB-8 robot. So yeah.
It's a deal.
Awesome. Okay, so on that note, we are almost on top of 2 hours for this conversation. So, guys, I would like to say thank you to all of us. I do believe that we had a really kind of a good conversation. I was trying to kind of cover all those things that at least like were interested to me, and I also do believe to other .NET developers and engineers and technical enthusiasts in general. So thanks again for attending this panel today, and I wish you the good rest of the day or the good rest of the evenings, depends on your time zone, and hope to see you soon on other events. Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.